Dr. Manabil, heading into part 7 of, or chapter 7 of Bernardo Kastrup's article, The Universe in Consciousness. And we are dealing with, quote, the key questions to be answered. Okay, so that's an interesting title. I haven't read it yet, right? So that's, as usual, I am jumping into deconstructions without usually any prior understanding, or at least if I have read it, it's usually a long time ago, right? In this case, I have not read it, so I'm just going on the fly, so to say, as usual. Now, the key questions to be answered. Why are we only arriving at that statement at chapter 7? Are they within the context of what have just been discussed? Right? The key questions to be answered is this headline referring to the just prior headlines or chapter contexts, or are these the general questions to be answered? Why are they arriving in chapter 7? Why are they not in the introductory chapter? Right? If you need an introductory chapter, what would be more meaningful than describing what are the questions I'm trying to answer, right? Okay. The principle of parsimony, right? So now we are talking about parsimony, which is keep it simple, stupid, right? Don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. Also, parsimony and Occam's razor are sort of in the same ballpark, right? There's something about, he has used this term parsimony and explanatory power and a few other descriptions about the shortcomings of other metaphysics, but he is using parsimony not as a foundational working ethics or philosophize on meta-philosophy, right? But as a critique point of something else, like materialism isn't parsimonious, therefore bad. Something like that, right? Rather than saying, I'm going to make my own philosophy and I'm going to present it and I'm going to appeal to parsimony in the sense that if I reach a point where I say it might be this, that, and the other, I'm going to say, no, parsimonious choice would be this, in sort of within the context of his argumentative structure, that he says, now I am appealing to parsimony, so therefore I'm going with this, right? In this case, he's using it to shoot down somebody else, right? And he might just be shooting down a straw man for all I know, right? We don't have those persons' statements anywhere that says this is the official story about, or the official philosophy, the official metaphysics called materialism or physicalism or whatever the term is, right? So he could, for all I know, right, he could be shooting down a straw man with this, right? And therefore he must be right. Something like that, right? Okay, let's dive in. The principle of parsimony implies, so of the two interpretations, I should read the whole sentence here, right? The principle of parsimony implies that of the two interpretations of cosmopsychism discussed above, idealist cosmopsychism is more economical and therefore should be preferred if it can account for all relevant facts. Well, first of all, there's so much wrong with this, right? First of all, he's criticizing what could potentially be a straw man using parsimony as a critique point of two metaphysics, right? That are sort of in the same ballpark, but slightly different. So he's using parsimony, which should be a regulatory aspect of his own philosophy, to criticize two slightly different versions of the same kind of metaphysics. They're saying it should be preferred because it accounts for all relevant facts. in the most efficient manner, you can say. But you cannot have a metaphysics that is accounting for facts. I keep repeating this, right? No, and it's not a debate, I know, but it starts to sound like I'm repeating myself, but I have to keep repeating it because whenever he uses this stupid structure of argumentation, I have to point it out. There are no facts in metaphysics or the reasonings to arriving at a metaphysics or an ontology. You need metaphysics or ontology to get to an understanding for what you mean by facts. And in between there, I would say you also need epistemology and a definition of knowledge in order to point to that fact. Fact is a reference to knowledge. You can't have knowledge before you have metaphysics. You need metaphysics to get to epistemology, to get to knowledge, to get to facts. It's quite simple, really. I mean, is it that difficult to understand, right? Maybe it's just because he's so foundationally confused about philosophy, and he's sort of gone into some kind of cherry-picking mode where he goes and picks whatever he needs to argue for whatever he needs, right? It's not particularly rigid and founded, right? The principle of parsimony is the first time he mentions this. There might be a reference to parsimony somewhere else, but he doesn't use it as far as I remember, right? So now this parsimony all of a sudden appears, right? And should be preferred, okay, but it's still a competition between two incorrect metaphysics. So one of them is slightly less incorrect than the other incorrect metaphysics. Okay, duh, man, right? I mean, when are we going to do some real philosophy here? Okay. I shall thus take idealist cosmopsychism as my starting point. Why should you? Why should that be? You're taking an invalid? Or don't you consider it invalid? I'm confused now, right? Thus? Why should you thus? It doesn't follow that you should take that. Take idealist cosmopsychism as my starting point, and then attempt to address each of its problems and limitations. Okay, so he's sort of saying, okay, if this is okay, then I'm going to find, what's a reductio ad absurdum or something kind of argumentation to point out why it isn't okay after all. Something like that. Okay, let's see. The goal is to account for all relevant facts. Again, there are no facts in metaphysics or ontology. Cosmic consciousness alone in the reduction base, because I do not feel the need to invent new names for ideas that have historically established names. I shall call the resulting ontology simply idealism. Well, then I'm sort of still confused about what's the difference between metaphysics and ontology. I wouldn't mind if somebody could clear that up for me, right? Okay, so can I get to the next page? Let me see if I can do that. Okay, specific, I'm not sure if I got to, let me see if the key, yeah, it must be this one. Okay, sorry for the, screwing around here. Specifically, here are the key problems of and questions not sufficiently or explicitly addressed by idealist cosmopsychism that I now set out to tackle. A. Grounding experience in cosmic consciousness. There are key problems of and questions not. It just feels like now he's pulling some critique points out of his ass to blame some other metaphysics as if it's sort of given that the metaphysics should explain this. So he's establishing his own philosophy by pointing at somebody and said, you don't have red hair. Those are not shoes, or something like that, right? I'm using a stupid metaphor here, right? But and as if you should be wearing shoes. So why should I be wearing shoes? You're sort of, I'm critiquing these people over there. You should have a shirt on, right? Your car should have 4 wheels. Why? Aren't you? I mean, where do these critique points come from? It's just like as if it's obvious that it is not obvious. There's nothing that is obvious anywhere in foundational philosophy. There's nothing that is obvious, right? So it feels manipulative, this, very much so, right? Rather than doing the good approach, in my opinion, to philosophy, which is starting from your own experience and say, okay, I'm starting from my own experience. Now I'm going to this step, I'm going to this step, and I'm going to use parsimony. I'm going to do this, that, and the other. Rather than saying they have a bad philosophy over there. Now I'm going to bring in the various important questions that you should be asking about philosophy, and they can't answer it. Now I'm going to answer these questions. But who says these questions needs to be answered, right? Where does all this come from? You avoid this stupid, fluffy kind of argumentation, which is sophist in nature, in my opinion, if you purely state your own philosophy. This is my philosophy. I have this starting point, I have the next point, and the next point, and these next points follow from the prior point because of this, because of that, because of the other, and so on. The decombination problem. How do private phenomenal fields form within cosmic consciousness? Why can I not read your thoughts by simply shifting the focus of my attention? Reducing perception. How can the revealed order of nature, the physical world we measure, be explained in terms of its concealed order, its underlying thoughts? Why are the respective qualities so different? D. Explaining the correlations between brain functions and inner experience. You can't explain that, because a brain function is an interpretation of an inner experience. Maybe that's what he's ultimately going for, but it's this annoying kind of rhetorical question sort of thing, right? That keeps you in this annoying limbo of academia, right? Rather than getting to the point, making sure that the reader has completely overview of what you're doing, and you show that you're trying to make it as simple and understandable as you possibly can, right? That's not the sense I get here. Far from it, to be honest, right? E. Explaining a seemingly shared autonomous world. Seemingly shared, what is that? Is that the external world? A seemingly shared world. So it's not seeming that it is there. That is giving, but it's seemingly shared. What does it mean that something is shared? You can't get to that. First of all, you have to establish why you think there's something outside, right? I might just be sitting here talking to my experiences for all I know, right? Why do you think there is an external world? What is the philosophical argument? Give it to me, man, right? Is imagined in consciousness. How can we all be imagining essentially the same world? How do you know about that? You don't know. You just said that you can't get to other people. It's something up here, right? The revealed order. I don't remember exactly in which one of them, right? Why are the respective qualities? No. Why can the B here, the decombination? Why can I not read your thoughts? And yet down here he said it's a seemingly shared. He just says he can't read it. And now he sees it's seemingly shared. How the hell does he do that? He contradicts himself. He says, no, I have no access to your experience. And down he says, implicitly, it's seemingly shared, as if he has access to other people's experiences. Man. Okay. Okay, man. Oh, man. 8. Experiences as excitations of cosmic consciousness. The first step is to clarify the relationship between cosmic consciousness and experience. This cosmic consciousness, maybe it's embedded in the descriptions of panpsychism somehow, and then he's just extracting whatever cherry picks out of that description that isn't his own philosophy, right? So he's building of cherry-picked aspects of other people's philosophy or metaphysics, right? Until now, he hasn't described anything of his own philosophy, as far as I can deduct. He has come to some critique points now, but there's no necessity. There's no appeal to, I am arguing for this because of this or something like that, right? The first step, why is it the first? Why? Why is that the first step? Right? The first step is to clarify the relationship between cosmic consciousness and experience. After all, the two are not, but you don't have access to any cosmic consciousness. That is just a claim, right? You can say, okay, I guess there's some cosmic consciousness beyond my experience. Okay, fair enough, but you have to stay with your experience. But then he says, okay, now I have established that there's cosmic consciousness beyond my... No, you haven't. It's just a claim. You can't work from a claim. You can't say, now I made this claim that I now have to explain how it becomes my experience. Because that claim was there because you had an experience. So now you're using the claim based on an experience to try to explain why that claim becomes the experience. Why can't these people see the stupidity of this kind of argumentation, right? After all, the two are interchangeable. Cosmic consciousness is ex hypothesi, something relatively enduring and stable, whereas experiences... After all, the two are not interchangeable. Cosmic consciousness is ex... I don't know what ex hypothesi means. Based on the hypothesis, something relatively enduring and stable. Relative to what? As soon as I hear these, it's an almost and close enough, or there's a good chance that, or relatively, I don't buy it. It's not good philosophy. It's something you have just made a claim about, you think is relatively this. Fuck off, man, right? And stable. Whereas experiences are relatively ephemeral and dynamic. Yet idealism posits that cosmic consciousness is nature's sole ontological primitive. Idealism posits that cosmic consciousness is nature's sole ontological primitive. But wasn't that what you called ultimates? So because you're not dealing in materialism anymore, we cannot talk about ultimates. Now we can only talk about cosmic consciousness. What does it mean that it's conscious? Is that the same as mind? Or is consciousness a subset of mind? It's just, there are too many terms for what might ultimately be more or less the same thing, just fractioned up in this, that, and the other, and the shell game moving the terms around and say, aha, I solved the problem. It's like, I'm not so sure you did, right? It's sort of, what I see these academics do is have a bag of words, and then they juggle these words like this, and hey, look, a word popped out there. I guess that's the solution, right? That's how I see this, right? Yet idealism points that cosmic consciousness is nature's sole ontological primitive. So how does the variety and dynamism of experience come into the picture? It still appeals to this circular argument, right? Okay, I submit that A, experiences are patterns of self-excitation of cosmic consciousness, and that B, cosmic consciousness has the inherent disposition of self-excitation. Oh man, I'm Bernardo Kastrup. I'm sitting here talking as if it's obvious that there is something outside my experiences. I'm only access to my experiences, but I'm just pretending there's something outside. Now I'm going to tell you how it works out there, and it's doing something to itself, right? Oh man. As such, experiences are not ontologically distinct from cosmic consciousness, just as a dance is not distinct from the dancer. A dance is not distinct from a dancer. No, but it's all interpretations. It's all your interpretation of what the hell is going on. You just label this as dance, right? Oh, this movement I call dance. It's all going on in your mind, right? You're using mental abstractions and cognitions and patterns to describe that which is beyond experience and abstractions and models and cognitions, right? You are taking a very, very, very big leap here. And the problem with this world beyond your experiences is exactly because you can't experience this, all these crazy people can come up with basically whatever the fuck they want to be there. Because you can't go and check, because you need your experiences in order to check it. And by definition, there is no experiences there, right? So they're going into these fancy abstractions and place it there because science, right? Fuck off. No, there is nothing to experience but cosmic consciousness in motion. What is motion? In a relative sense, doesn't relativity work there? Because motion is relative to something else. You're moving because you're comparing to something else that is either standing still or moving away from that which you think is moving while standing still compared to you. So you have to experience that external world in order to say it is in motion. Well, you can't do that because it's beyond experience. So you can't claim motion there. Right? It's fucking idiotic, this. Particular experiences correspond to particular patterns of self-excitation of cosmic consciousness, just as particular choreographies correspond to particular patterns of self-excitation of the dancer. These patterns can evolve in time and differ across different segments of cosmic consciousness. Holy shit. All this is just something he's pulled out of his ass, right? It's the scientific approach. It's the what if approach to philosophy that is invalid, in my opinion, right? You can't go and see, I think it might be this. Can you refute it? No, you can't. So yeah, I am proven, right? It's stupid. You can't use this approach to establish foundational philosophy. I would say this is invalid. This is cloud castle talk, right? He's creating shit because he possibly hates that there's something he cannot explain. So he's finds some explanation to say, okay, now I explained it. Now I can relax, right? He can't leave it and say, I can't explain it. I can't go there. I have to leave it alone. It's a black box, right? I only have my experiences, right? The black box I can't say anything about because I need the experiences. That's all I have. And if I go and have experiences there, it's still a black box, what it is that I potentially experiencing. If I'm working from the axiom that there's something beyond my experiences responsible for my experiences. It's still a black box I can't go to, right? It's the dark ocean without a shore, as Immanuel Kant said, right? Of course, it is the variety and dynamics of excitations across the underlying medium. What is an underlying medium? Now, what is that? Is that the same as cosmic consciousness? The underlying medium that lead to the different experiential qualities. So, qualities is different from the medium responsible for the qualities. So he is sort of close to appealing to dualism here, right? One must, parenthesis, one must be careful at this point by referring to cosmic consciousness as a medium. I may appear to be objectifying it. Language forces me into this dilemma, but cosmic consciousness is subjectivity itself, not an object. It's not just subjectivity, it is subjectivity itself. What is subjectivity? It's not this all these words that are floating around, right? To describe that which you do not have access to. I mean, it doesn't help to pile on new words and new words and new words, right? That doesn't help me. It's not enough to call it cosmic consciousness. He also calls it a medium. And he also calls it pure subjectivity now, right? I don't buy it. It's just, then I'll use a new word, right? Then I've convinced you now. Okay, then I'll use another word, right? I can always come up with another word. This way, even if the medium is internal and immutable, its self-excitation can come and go in myriad patterns. This notion is entirely analogous to and consistent with how modern physics attempts to reduce the variety and dynamics of natural phenomena to an enduring primary substrate, quantum field. I need to take this one again. I'll scroll up a bit here. This notion is entirely analogous to and consistent with how modern physics attempts to reduce the variety of dynamics and natural phenomena to an enduring primary substrate, quantum field theory. Yes, it's a theory. It's a scientific theory. It's a what-if claim, right? You can say, okay, now I'm going to create a philosophy based on what-if that aligns itself with a scientific what-if. That's not what you do. Because the scientific what-if is based on an experience. Based on empiricism, right? Creating a story about something going on that haven't been refuted yet as some kind of abstract understanding of what might be going on. Quantum field theory, for instance, posits that all fundamental particles are particular modes of self-excitation of a quantum field, which is inherently disposed to self-excitation. Superstring theories posit essentially the same, but now the self-excited substrate is hyperdimensional strings Finally, according to M theory, the patterns of nature consists of modes of self-excitation of a hyperdimensional membrane. But all these theories are mental abstractions, and by definition they have to be a part of the mental, part of consciousness, right? So they're not the thing you're trying to describe, which is beyond consciousness. And it doesn't help that you just say, I guess there's also consciousness out there, right? Which you haven't argued for, to the best of my understanding, right? Now, I jumped through a bit of these panpsychism and so on, and you might have written something there that I then missed. Okay, too bad, right? But that's the problem with this kind of approach to philosophy. What I'm hearing him say so far is, he's just talking about a reality as if there, of course there is, I don't have to even talk about it. It's sort of, I don't even have to state I'm working from the idea that there is an outside. He's just working from it without stating it, only implicitly, right? That there is an external world to these experiences. Now he says there's somebody who don't understand that there is this, that the experience you have is not the outside. Bad metaphysics, right? Then he says, or appeals to, okay, there still is an outside. Just even though I have refuted that the experience is an outside, so there's nothing apparently about the experiences that clarifies an outside. So where the hell does he keep this outside then, right? But he keeps it. Now he says, in some circumvented manner, by pointing out limitations of other metaphysics, that it must be mind or cosmic consciousness out there, right? So apparently it's consciousness everywhere. And he says, okay, there's somebody who has some scientific, somebody who's working from a materialist metaphysics, have some theories about what is going on out there, described by their abstractions and their models and their ideas, which are obviously in their consciousness, as a description of an outside, because they think those are actually outside there because of the fallacious nature of their metaphysics. So now he is going to use that to say they are incorrectly describing an outside world using an inside world. And that is supporting my idea of a self-excited external cosmic consciousness. So he's basically using a paradoxical understanding of an outside world to argue for his different, yet still the same kind of an outside world he's taking for granted. While he has refuted that these experiences could possibly be an outside. And still, a tomato is still a tomato, right? If I go pick up the cucumber in my refrigerator, I guess it's the fucking same cucumber after I've read this article, right? So what is the fucking point of all this shit, right? It doesn't help me in any way. None whatsoever, man, right? Idealism, as I am formulating it here, essentially entails porting the evolving mathematical apparatus of modern physics to cosmic consciousness itself, as opposed to an abstract conceptual object. This could require but a straightforward and seamless transposition implying no loss of predictive power. Predictive? What are you going to predict now? You can't predict something that is beyond your experience, because then you're predicting something before it becomes the experience. So you're saying my ideas of what is going on beyond my experience cannot violate whatever becomes that experience. But you're creating something that is grabbed out of your ass. And then you're just going to say, well, I guess that when I have the experience, that's just what it looks like. whenever that self-excitation of that particular whatever becomes an experience. Then you have not explained it. You have just created something I can't check whether or not this is the case. And you're saying it just becomes whatever you experience then. Okay. 9 is tackling the decombination problem. I think I will keep that one for the, maybe I can squeeze it in. I guess I can squeeze it in. 9, tackling the decombination problem. Cosmic consciousness comprises a variety of phenomenal contents, experiences, patterns of self-excitation, such as thoughts and feelings. If we take the human psyche as a representative sample of how cosmic consciousness operates, which is the best we can do, really, we can infer that ordinarily these phenomenal contents are internally integrated through cognitive associations. A feeling evokes an abstract idea, which triggers a memory, which inspires a thought, etc. These associations are logical in the sense that, for instance, the memory inspires the thought because of a certain implicit logic linking the two. Ordinary phenomenal activity in cosmic consciousness can thus be modeled as a connected, directed graph. See figure 1a. Each vertex in the graph represents a particular phenomenal content, and each edge a cognitive association logically linked contents together. Every phenomenal content in the graph of figure 1a can be reached from any other phenomenal content through a chain of cognitive associations. Oh my God. Figure 1a. Figure 1. A connected graph A illustrating normal integration of phenomenal contents. This is a model. This is a piece of paper. This is a computer screen, right? These are little balls and black ink, whatever, right? Pixels. Where did you get this, right? It was sort of illustrating normal integration of phenomenal contents and a disconnected graph. B, illustrating dissociation and the corresponding formation of an alter inner subgraph in gray. So why is it that these arrows goes in the outer, in the A? The arrows can only go this way. Why can't they go the other way? And why can't this number 2 from left go in a diagonal to that over there? Why is this sort of ordered arrangement or path? And arrows over there can only go that way, not the other way, or why? Why is that the case? What is it describing? You're just pulling something out of your ass that, yes, it alludes to something, but it simplifies it in a way that potentially leaves out something that is unwanted so that you can get to the point you're trying to get to, right? You're just removing shit and then saying, that's dissociated, that thing there, right? You're just doing it in your mind. You're creating the story. You're just creating a story about how you want it to be composed and put together that fits with your idea. You can't do that in philosophy. Because then you're opening up for avenues where you can basically come up with whatever shit you want. Right? Philosophy is where you have to be fucking strict with what you claim, right? And in my opinion, you can only claim that which you can experience. You can't claim anything else. There's no what ifs in philosophy. You have colors, you have sounds, you have tastes, and so on. You have stomach aches, you have, desires and so on. You can refer to all those. That's a part of your conscious ontology, let's say, right? That's what you have awareness of, right? It's a description of the structure of that which you can be aware of. You can't go beyond that. You can do it in this stupid way, or sort of fanciful academic kind of whatever matrix story here, right? But you're just creating something that I can't go and check whether or not is the case. All these abstractions are by definition disconnected, you could say, from experience, direct experience. If I have an abstraction like a circle, I can't go and experience circle. I can go and experience something and say that resembles the abstraction I call circle. But because it's an abstraction, it feels like you can go and do with them what you want. You can put abstractions wherever you want them to be, in some stories of what if it's a circle and what if it's an arrow and what if there's a connection here and a connection there. It's all based on these abstractions. My point is just, these abstractions are a description of what you can be aware of. You can't just shove them in beyond your experience, or shove them beyond your consciousness or your awareness, or whatever term you're putting on what is going on there, right? And if you do that, you are forcing an explanation into an area, a realm where you cannot explain anything. And, as I pointed out several times, at the end of the day, you're still left with your experiences and what you derive from those experiences, right? Cognitions, abstractions, and so on. You're still left with that. You're still left with the experience of tomato and pizza and bicycle and, mammoth, right? Maybe not mammoth, but elephant, right? You're still left with that. No matter how harebrained a system of description of what might be beyond your experiences are what you have. That's my opinion, why you have to base your philosophy purely on what you can experience. That's your ontology. Classifying your experience, trying to get a grasp of it, that's the foundational, right? That's ontology, and that's why I'm at this point rejecting metaphysics, in the sense that if metaphysics is an fabulation of what might be beyond your experiences and trying to describe that, you are violating good philosophy, right? Each vertex in figure 1 represents a particular pattern of self-excitation. So he's making little balls. Shouldn't it be fields, right? If everything is fields, why is he making little balls? He constantly critiques little balls, right? And now he's making little balls. Each edge represents thus an association between two patterns of self-excitation, each pattern with its particular constituent harmonics. Harmonics now. When the two patterns of self-excitation are concurrently present, that is, when the two associated phenomenal contents are experienced together. The association can be seen as a combination of the respective harmonics, like in a musical chord, wherein multiple notes are played at the same time. When the association unfolds in temporal sequence, as, for instance, in the case of a thought that fades away to make room for the experience of the memory it evokes, it can be visualized as a transition from the first to the second pattern of self-excitation, like notes played in sequence in a melody. There is no melody before you have a sequence of notes, right? You don't have a melody where you then identify sequence of notes. You have a sequence of notes that you identify as a melody. Oh. However, we know from the psychiatric literature that sometimes a disruption and or discontinuity in the normal integration of phenomenal contents can occur in the human psyche. Black and Grant, this is so-called This is called dissociation, and is well recognized in psychiatry today. Oh yeah, dissociation entails that some phenomenal contents cease to be able to evoke others. A person suffering from a particularly severe form of dissociation called dissociative identity disorder exhibits multiple discrete centers of self-awareness. Well, how do you know that? Right? It's based on reporting and putting some electrodes and showing something on a computer that you expect to be interpreted in a certain way without you having any reason to do so. It's based on experiences of whatever X, Y, and Z. So now you're taking experiences and saying they are representations of something beyond. Right? Aren't you violating the paradox of materialism now here, right? Isn't this an appeal to, it's just something new, nobody has possibly done this before, using DID to do this, but isn't it just a fancy, weird, there's a woman in Germany who has experienced whatever, and now all of a sudden there's sort of a backdoor to this, fabled world beyond experiences, right? I'm not buying it. Each alter corresponds thus to a particular segment of the psychic space wherein it forms. Dissociation can be visualized as what happens when the graph in a figure 1a becomes disconnected, such as shown in figure 1b. Some phenomenal contents can then no longer be reached from others. The inner subgraph is thus a representation of an alter corresponding to a particular segment of the original integrator. So if there's created an alter, you can't, it's like, it's this weird that I think that in this mind there is created two minds now that are separated. But I'm receiving reports about it using my experience with my mind, and I'm interpreting it as two minds. So therefore, dissociation. Right? I mean, it's creative. I'll give him that, right? Now, I'm not buying somebody measuring and claiming and reporting, writing down, Bernardo Kastrup reading, interpreting, saying, aha, I might be able to use this, saying, therefore I have metaphysics, and you should understand this metaphysics because it's great. No, that's the whole point of metaphysics, or rather ontology, being a description, a classification of your experience. There might be 8 billion different ontologies, for all I know, right? If everybody does an ontology where they describe their own experience, it might be 8 billion more or less different ontologies. So be it then, right? But I'm not going to buy anybody says, I have an idea what goes on beyond your experiences. Right? First of all, he's using my experiences to tell me about it, right? So I have to trust my experiences are telling me what is beyond my experiences. And he says, you can't experience this yourself. It's only some woman in Germany who knocked her head on the floor, and some other putting some electrodes and reporting and saying, aha, I think this is, I'm not going to base my ontology on that, right? Not in a fucking billion years. There is compelling empirical evidence. Okay, so you can use empiricism in your metaphysics, right? And calling it compelling is not an argument. I'll be the judge whether or not something is compelling, right? Don't try to, sweeten my ears with these words, right? That different alters can remain concurrently conscious. In Morton Prince's well-known study of Miss Beauchamp, case of the idea, one of the authors was a conscious personality in a deeper sense. When she was not interacting with the world, she did not become dormant, but persisted and was active. Broad's more recent work corroborates the view that alters can be co-conscious. He points to the struggle of different alters for executive control of the body and the fact that alters might intervene in the lives of others, that is, other alters. That is, other alters, intentionally interfering with their interests and activities, or at least playing mischief on them. It thus appears that alters can not only be concurrently conscious, but that they all can also vie for dominance with each other. Fuck off, man. Clearly, the evidence indicates that different alters entail, to paraphrase Coleman, different co-conscious points of view and next to private qualitative fields. These private qualitative fields being carved out by virtue of dissociation. In other words, different alters are different subjects. The connected subgraph of phenomenal content associated with an alter represents its private qualitative or phenomenal field. Moreover, alters from within a single overarching psyche. So the process of their formation entails a decomposition of an original subject into multiple lower level subjects. Lower level? Oh, lower level subjects. Okay. So subjects are subordinate to the big subjectivity, right? Sort of a Freudian slip there. Lower level subject. You are a lower level subject, right? I submit that dissociation in cosmic consciousness is what leads to the formation of relative subjects. Each relative subject is thus an alter of cosmic consciousness, its private qualitative field corresponding to a segment of the latter self-exciatory medium. By virtue of corresponding to a segment of cosmic consciousness, each alter retains, as Shani posited, the intrinsic features of sentience and cause subjectivity, but the local pattern of dissociative phenomenal activity in its respective segment is what bestows an alter its specific character, its unique perspective. In other words, the primary sense of I-ness of all alters is that of cosmic consciousness itself. The very consciousness of the alters as an ontological medium is cosmic consciousness. He's lost me now, right? I'm sorry, but foundationally, I don't buy much of these argumentations, right? Basically nothing. And saying that somebody measured something down there somewhere, and this is an explanation of what goes on before you have an experience. I'm almost scared of this kind of philosophy, right? I have this sense of, I'm going to tell you about something going on. That is, you are subordinate to this enormous power that is sort of almost impinging on you, right? It's paralyzing almost, right? I have a very strong reaction to it. And that's not an argument and such, but it is the appeal to, no, you can't experience this, little subordinate, subjective, whatever, right? But I'm a PhD, so I can create some diagrams and listen to a woman in Germany, and therefore there's a much bigger subject out there that is, you're just an insignificant whatever, right? It starts to becomes this, you're just a useless temporary little excitation of some kind, right? Fuck off, man. By virtue of corresponding to segment of cosmic consciousness, it says, let me see, but the local pattern of dissociative phenomenal activity in its respective segment is what bestows and alters its specific... No, Sorry if I screwed it up. I'll start here. But the particular phenomenal field of an alter, which defines its identity as a seemingly separate individual, is demarked by a local dissociative process analogous to DID in the corresponding segment of the medium. Okay, so I'm just in a big medium. I'm just some excitation somewhere. Or there's some excitations out there that creates an experience in my dissociation. Why do I need this? If anything, it just makes me more anxious. Right? If it doesn't help me in any way. I still have to go and get potatoes and tomatoes and elephants and bicycles, right? If I say, yeah, that's tomato is an excitation. Yeah, but I still have to treat it as a tomato and my ideas of tomatoes and deducing what I can use that tomato for and so on. There's no ethics anywhere in this as far as the eye can see, right? It's completely devoid of any ethics, and for good reasons. This is not where you should do ethics. But I can't see where I'm just left with this harebrained story about what goes on before I have the experience of tomato. And then it says, yeah, you just this normal, unimportant experience of tomatoes. That's, I'll leave you there, right? Go pick up your stupid tomato, right? That's what's important to me, right? Naturally, because alters are fully grounded in cosmic consciousness, it is coherent to say that let me see how far, okay, I think I can do this before in the 3 minute right here. They become separated from it. Only an illusion of separation arises as a particular phenomenal concept in the alter's dissociated qualitative field. The key to my argument is the notion that dissociation can demarcate and carve out a private phenomenal field. This way, alters must become blind to all phenomenality taking place outside their respective field, which then explains why I cannot read your thoughts. But you're just putting it together in a way. It's sort of scientific. I'm creating a model, and I can't refute it using my experiences, so I can still claim that the model is functional. It's a purely scientific approach to philosophy. I don't buy that. I find this to be dysfunctional. It's a violation what it means to do philosophy, in my opinion. Compliance I cannot read your thoughts. And indeed, there is strong empirical evidence for the literally blinding power of dissociation. Okay, so that is the blind person's not thinking they're blind, so the seeing part of the brain doesn't light up, whatever, something like that. I don't care about it, because you can use this in your philosophy. When a sighted alter assumes control, the usual brain activity returned. Clearly thus, if nothing else, for sheer empirical reasons, dissociation is a sufficiently powerful potential solution to the decombination problem. Well, I don't buy it, right? And there's also somebody online found videos that points out that in the other situations you can get, under hypnosis, you can get people to get various brain parts lighting up, even if there isn't anything, just based on their imagination or something like that, right? So this is really out there. First of all, because of all the critique points I've made so far, but also because you can't use somebody else's claim about what is going on as a foundation for describing your experience. And what is beyond your experience doesn't matter, because you're always dealing with your experiences, right? So all this metaphysics gets nowhere. It is stranding in fairy tale land, right? Okay, see you in the next one.